We're pleased to bring you the latest from John Karl's Subway series. This is Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat of Colorado, had some interesting things to say recounting his recent trip to China on this very issue of debt and deficit that we talked about. Take a look.
All right, Senator Bennet.
All right.
Welcome to the Subway series.
Nice to be on the subway with you.
You got one? You don't have one of these in Denver, do you?
We don't.
Yeah.
We have something at the airport that gets you from the terminal to the planes.
Because that airport.
And we have a light rail. We have the largest voter-approved mass transit light rail going on in the country.
But what's your sense? You've got a business background, financial background, as well as working in schools, political background. What is your sense of how serious this debt issue is? Because you hear different takes on it.
My sense is that it's incredibly serious, both in the short term and the long term.
Okay, so help me understand the stakes then. If we cannot come up with a deal to deal with the deficit this year,
Yeah.
if the parties can't come together, what's the risk?
Okay, so if we can't come up with a deal this year, you know as well as I do that we're not going to come up with a deal next year because the presidential campaign. So then you're into the first year of either the second Obama administration or a new administration. So that's a 3-year period. And if you asked me, what are the chances that the capital markets, the guys that own the debt that we have sold them, come to the conclusion that we're not serious about the fiscal problem, that we're not going to be able to pay our debts, I would say that there's even odds that could happen in the next 3 years.
And if that happens, I mean, if this happens, if suddenly the bond market goes nuts,
it would be a catastrophe. It would be a far worse economic turmoil than we've just been through, because what would happen is our interest rates would shoot through the roof because people would say, I'm no longer going to buy that paper at that price. I'm going to charge you a much higher price for that paper. Our debt, a lot of our debt is financed in short-term paper, which would have to be refinanced at higher rates. So it would have a horrendous effect on the fiscal condition of the country, drive up our deficit, and ensure that we're spending more on interest than we were on the domestic programs we talked about earlier. It also would have a profound economic effect on all my families in Colorado because their rates on their mortgages would skyrocket. Their rates to get an auto loan would skyrocket, and the business environment would be disastrous. This is why we can't let that happen. By the way, it's also why we can't let the political argument around whether we should raise the debt ceiling or not lead us to a place where we're not raising the debt ceiling.
yeah. So you're about as hawkish as probably any Democrat when it comes to dealing with the debt, but you believe you shouldn't mess with the debt ceiling.
Yeah, I mean,
renew it. You would do it without any strings attached, would you?
Well, yeah, but we're not going to. There's not going to be a no strings attached vote, which I actually think is okay as long as whatever the strings are reasonable ones, and if this is a forcing event, that's good. But what people should understand about this is Washington. This is such phony Washington politics. Because people are saying, well, in the name of fiscal responsibility, I'm going to vote against lifting the debt ceiling. When the reality is that what the debt ceiling's about is it's not like cutting up your credit card. It is like getting your cable bill and saying, oh, I'm not going to pay it this month. Except that it happens to be the full faith and credit of the United States. And if we say to our bondholders, we're not going to pay what we already said we owed you, again, our interest rates are going to shoot through the roof.
Well, what's your sense? You were just in China. Obviously, a lot of our new debt's being financed by the Chinese. They're the ones buying a lot of the bonds. Are we going to get to a point where they are saying, not so much anymore, or they're going to demand a higher interest rate?
I'll tell you something about that. The most embarrassing moment to me in that trip was when a government official said to me, or said to the delegation, you guys need to get your fiscal house in order.
Telling you?
Yeah, it felt like being at a shareholder meeting, for a corporation, and the shareholder is saying, no, you need to do this, or you're being irresponsible to that.
In this case, the shareholders are the Chinese.
Yeah, we can't put our kids in this position, And so, and by the way, not only do they own a whole bunch of our debt, but they have a cash surplus, which they're using to invest in infrastructure and in natural resources all over the globe. And that's what we are increasingly incapable of being able to do as long as we don't get this resolved. If we don't get it done, I think that the American people's creeping sense that our government is incapable of meeting the challenges of our time would actually be reflected in our inability to do anything, and that would be a tragedy. We're sent here to do this. This is our job, and I think we should stay in the room as long as it takes for us to get this done. I don't know how people go home if we don't get it done and explain why they couldn't do it.
But can people go home and explain that they had to make really tough choices on popular entitlement programs? They had to do, you know, deep cuts in popular programs. I mean, are people able to
It's hard to
explain
do that, but that's what leadership is all about. And I think in today's context, I believe the American people are ahead of the political class. And I think that as long as we can show them that it's a thoughtful, comprehensive, and bipartisan plan, that they will take a plan over no plan.
Who killed the Gang of Six?
I don't think it's dead.
Is it not really?
I don't think
I mean,
it's
we have
dead.
all these meetings at the White House. We have these other groups.
I don't think it's dead. And I think that, in fact, I would say that that has some of the most promise that we've got, because we've got 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans working together to try to come up with a plan that, by the way, everybody's going to have a reason to hate part of. You never get a plan that everybody's going to love, but maybe that's how we make progress.
So what are the stakes in those talks, those Gang of Six talks that the Republican leadership has made clear they don't like, the Democratic leadership makes sure they don't like?
I think they're very high, and I'd say the Gang of Six, give us something that we can sink our teeth into, and I'll be the first one there.
To support it.
Yep.
All right,
Thanks.
Senator, thanks for coming on the subway with us.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having
it.
me. Thank you.
Not dead yet. You hear that from Senator Michael Bennett about the Gang of
The
Six
Gang
and
of
their
6 or 7.
Something
Right.
like that. Something like that.